Jason Short is third. Johnny Prince is P4. Jason Short is P3. The qualification session is at GTR2 Conversion in Techno Centre, France. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is 20th on mediums. Bray from New Zealand is first on mediums. The Race Dictator from New Zealand is P1 on mediums. That Canadian guy from Canada is P3 on mediums. The Race Dictator is first. That Canadian guy is third. The Race Dictator is P1. 10 minutes remaining in the session. The Race Dictator improved his first with a 128.147. Bray is fourth. That Canadian guy is second on mediums. Best lap is a 128.595. 0.448 off pole. Ray is fourth up 0.16 on mediums. The race dictator is first up 0.11. Best lap is a 128.147. That Canadian guy is second. The race dictator is P1 up 0.11. The race dictator is provisional pole with a 127.760. Ray is P4 up 0.10. Five minutes remaining in the session. Ray improved his third with a 128.879. 1.119 off pole. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is P4 up 0.28. That Canadian guy is second up 0.64. That Canadian guy improved his P2 with a 128.004. 0.244 off pole. Jason Short from New Zealand is P5 on mediums. Jason Short improved his P3 with a 128.330. 0.570 off pole. The race dictator is provisional pole with a 127.724. The race dictator is P1. That Canadian guy is P2. Best lap is a 128.004. 0.280 off pole. Jason Short is third up 0.30. Jason Short improved his P2 with a 127.958. 0.234 off pole. Johnny Prince is fifth. Best lap is a 128.985. 1.261 off pole. Jason Short is P2. Best lap is a 127.958. 0.234 off pole. Johnny Prince is fifth. Jason Short is second. Johnny Prince is P5 on mediums. The qualifying session is now in overtime. Jason Short is second on mediums. Johnny Prince is fifth. Jason Short is second. Broadcast bot is 20th on mediums. The race session is at GTR2 conversion in Techno Center, France. The race dictator is first. Jason Short from New Zealand is P2 on mediums. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. Jason Short is now P1. That Canadian guy from Canada is second on mediums. The race dictator from New Zealand is third on mediums. The race dictator passed that Canadian guy for second. That Canadian guy is P3. The race dictator is P2. That Canadian guy is third. The race dictator is P2. That Canadian guy from Canada is third, 0.4 ahead of Johnny Prince. The race dictator is P2, 0.4 ahead of that Canadian guy. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is third on mediums, 0.4 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is second, 0.5 ahead of Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince is third, 0.2 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is P2. Best lap is a 1:34.651. 0.488 off the fastest lap. Bray from New Zealand is third on mediums, 0.9 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is second, 0.7 behind Jason Short. Bray is third, 1.4 behind the race dictator. The race dictator from New Zealand is P2, 0.9 behind Jason Short. Bray from New Zealand is P3, 1.6 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is second, 0.8 behind Jason Short. "15 minutes remaining in the session. Bray from New Zealand is P3, 2.7 behind the race dictator. race dictator is second, 1.0 behind Jason Short. That Canadian guy is P4, 3.2 behind Bray. The race dictator is P2, 1.3 behind Jason Short. That Canadian guy is fourth, 2.6 behind Bray. The race dictator from New Zealand is second, 1.3 behind Jason Short. That Canadian guy is fourth, 2.1 behind Bray. The race dictator is second, 1.2 behind Jason Short. That Canadian guy on lap 5 is fourth, 1.1 behind Bray. That Canadian guy was 3.1 faster last lap. Johnny Prince is P5. Johnny Prince is now P2. The race dictator is third on mediums, 0.1 ahead of that Canadian guy. The race dictator exiting pits on mediums. Bray exiting pits on mediums. Bray is P4. That Canadian guy exiting pits on mediums. The race dictator is third. Best lap is a 1:28.464. 0.196 off the fastest lap. The race dictator passed Johnny Prince for second. Johnny Prince is P3, 1.4 behind the race dictator. Johnny Prince was 17.9 faster last lap. Bray is P4. Jason Short exiting pits on mediums. Johnny Prince is third, 1.8 behind the race dictator. Ten minutes remaining in the session. The race dictator is P2, 2.0 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince is third on mediums, 2.8 behind the race dictator. The race dictator on lap 7 is second, 1.4 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince is P3. Best lap is a 1:28.611. 0.343 off the fastest lap. The race dictator is P2, 0.6 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince is fourth. Johnny Prince exiting pits on mediums. The race dictator is P2, 1.1 behind Jason Short. The race dictator was 6.7 faster last lap. That Canadian guy is fifth. The race dictator is P2, 0.5 behind Jason Short. That Canadian guy is P5. The race dictator is second, 0.5 behind Jason Short. The race dictator was 0.6 faster last lap. That Canadian guy is P5. Johnny Prince is fourth, 1.3 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy was 7.0 faster last lap. That Canadian guy is fifth, 1.0 behind Johnny Prince. The race dictator is P2, 0.6 ahead of Bray. Bray is P3, 0.1 behind the race dictator. The race dictator was 2.3 faster last lap. The race dictator is P2, 0.6 behind Jason Short. 5 minutes remaining in the session. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.3 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is second, 0.2 ahead of that Canadian guy. The race dictator lost P2 to that Canadian guy. Johnny Prince is P3, 1.0 ahead of that Canadian guy. Bray is P4, 1.2 behind Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince is third, 0.7 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is second on mediums, 1.2 ahead of Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince is P3, 1.7 behind the race dictator. The race dictator from New Zealand is P2, 1.6 behind Jason Short. Jason Short was 0.7 faster last lap. Johnny Prince is third. The race dictator is second, 1.2 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince is P3, 2.3 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is P2, 1.0 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince is P3, 2.2 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is second, 1.3 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince on lap 13 is P3, 2.8 behind the race dictator. The race dictator from New Zealand is P2, 1.3 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince is P3, 2.6 behind the race dictator. The race dictator on lap 13 is P2, 1.4 behind Jason Short. The leader has just finished the race. Jason Short finished P1. Johnny Prince finished P2. The race dictator finished P3. That Canadian guy finished 4th. Bray is 5th. Bray finished 5th. Broadcast bot is P6. The race session is at GTR2 conversion in Techno Centre, France. Bray from New Zealand is first on mediums. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. Bray lost P1 to that Canadian guy. Jason Short from New Zealand is P3 on mediums. Jason Short is now P2. The race dictator from New Zealand is P3 on mediums. The race dictator is now 3rd. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is P4 on mediums. The race dictator is P3. Johnny Prince is 4th. The race dictator is P3. The race dictator is now 3rd. That Canadian guy is 1st. Jason Short on lap 2 is P3, 0.6 behind Bray. Bray is P2. Best lap is a 1:35.573. 1.918 off the fastest lap. Jason Short is P2, 0.1 ahead of Bray. Jason Short is now third. Johnny Prince on lap 2 is third, 0.4 ahead of Jason Short. Jason Short is P4, 0.5 behind Johnny Prince. The race dictator on lap 2 is P2, 0.4 ahead of Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince is P3. Best lap is a 1:35.938. 2.283 off the fastest lap. Johnny Prince lost P4 to Bray. Jason Short is third, 0.5 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is third, battling Jason Short. The race dictator lost P3 to Bray. Jason Short is second, 1.9 ahead of Bray. The race dictator is P4, 1.0 behind Bray. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Jason Short is second, 2.2 behind that Canadian guy. The race dictator is P4, 0.5 behind Bray. Jason Short is P2, 1.9 behind that Canadian guy. The race dictator is fourth, 0.6 behind Bray. Jason Short is P2, 2.7 ahead of Bray. The race dictator is P4, 0.1 behind Bray. Jason Short is second, 2.7 behind that Canadian guy. is 4th, 0.2 behind the race dictator. Jason Short from New Zealand is 2nd, 2.7 behind that Canadian guy. Bray is P4, 0.6 behind the race dictator. Jason Short from New Zealand is 2nd, 2.9 behind that Canadian guy. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is P3. Bray exiting pits on mediums. The race dictator exiting pits on mediums. Jason Short is P2, 2.9 behind that Canadian guy. The race dictator is 5th. Best lap is a 1:28.899. 0.962 off the fastest lap. Bray is P4, 2.8 ahead of the race dictator. The race dictator on lap 6 is 5th, 1.8 behind Bray. That Canadian guy exiting pits on mediums. Jason Short exiting pits on mediums. The race dictator passed Bray for 4th, 10 minutes remaining in the session. Johnny Prince is 3rd, 0.6 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince passed that Canadian guy for 1st. Jason Short on lap 7 is P3, 0.5 behind that Canadian guy. Jason Short was 1.3 faster last lap. The race dictator is 4th, 0.7 behind Jason Short. The race dictator was 11.7 faster last lap. Jason Short is P3, 0.5 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy from Canada is P3 on mediums, 0.3 ahead of the race dictator. That Canadian guy is now P5. That Canadian guy passed the race dictator for P4. Bray is P3, 1.6 behind Jason Short. Bray was 2.5 faster last lap. The race dictator is P5. Johnny Prince exiting pits on mediums. Jason Short is P2, 0.4 behind Johnny Prince. Jason Short passed Johnny Prince for first. That Canadian guy is fourth, 1.2 behind Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince is P3 on mediums, 0.8 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is fourth, 0.8 behind Johnny Prince. The race dictator is fifth, battling that Canadian guy. The race dictator entering the pits is fifth. Bray is P2, 2.4 ahead of Johnny Prince. That Canadian guy is P4, 1.6 behind Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince is P3, 1.1 behind Bray. The race dictator exiting pits on mediums. Bray is fourth, 0.9 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy was 2.2 faster last lap. That Canadian guy is third, 1.1 behind Johnny Prince. Bray entering the pits is P1. That Canadian guy is now P4. Broadcast bot is 20th. That Canadian guy is 5th. The race session is at GTR2 Conversion in Techno Center, France. That Canadian guy is P4. Jason Short is P1. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. That Canadian guy from Canada is P2 on mediums. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is 5th on mediums. That Canadian guy is P2. Johnny Prince is P5. That Canadian guy is P2. Johnny Prince is 5th, 4.6 behind the race dictator. That Canadian guy is P2, 2.0 behind Jason Short. The race dictator from New Zealand on lap 2 is 4th on mediums, 4.3 behind Bray. That Canadian guy is 2nd, 2.0 behind Jason Short. The race dictator is P4. Best lap is a 1:46.088. 18.092 off the fastest lap. That Canadian guy from Canada is P2, 2.4 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince is P5. Best lap is a 1:29.071. 1.075 off the fastest lap. Bray from New Zealand is 4th on mediums, 0.9 ahead of Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince is 5th, 0.9 behind Bray. That Canadian guy is P2, 0.4 behind Jason Short. The race dictator on lap 3 is P3, 0.4 ahead of Bray. The race dictator was 1.9 faster last lap. 15 minutes remaining in the session. That Canadian guy is 2nd, 0.3 behind Jason Short. That Canadian guy was 1.7 faster last lap. The race dictator is 3rd, 0.3 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is P2, 0.2 ahead of the race dictator. The race dictator is 3rd. Best lap is a 1:28.238. 0.242 off the fastest lap. The race dictator passed that Canadian guy for 2nd. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.1 behind the race dictator. Johnny Prince is 4th, 0.9 behind that Canadian guy. Bray is P4, 0.2 behind that Canadian guy. Bray passed that Canadian guy for P3. Bray lost P3 to that Canadian guy. Johnny Prince is P5, 0.2 behind Bray. Johnny Prince passed Bray for P4. Bray is 5th, 0.2 behind Johnny Prince. The Race Dictator is 2nd, 2.2 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince is 4th, 2.8 behind that Canadian guy. The Race Dictator is P2 on mediums, 2.2 behind Jason Short. Jason Short was 0.8 faster last lap. Johnny Prince is P4, 3.6 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy was 2.7 faster last lap. The Race Dictator is P2, 2.1 behind Jason Short. That Canadian guy on lap 6 is 3rd, 0.9 behind the Race Dictator. That Canadian guy passed the Race Dictator for P2. The Race Dictator is 3rd on mediums, 1.9 behind that Canadian guy. Johnny Prince is 4th, 1.0 behind the Race Dictator. 10 minutes remaining in the session. Johnny Prince passed the Race Dictator for 3rd. The Race Dictator is 4th, 2.8 behind Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince is P3, 3.2 ahead of the Race Dictator. The Race Dictator is P4. That Canadian guy is P2, 1.7 behind Jason Short.